Bakersfield Unified Union School Board meeting. Today is Monday, January 27th, and we are here at Brewster Pierce Memorial School in Huntington. I'm going to run through the agenda and see if we have any changes. So we have roll call, community comments, an update from the principal, discuss the board resolution, discuss whether we should have a board resolution regarding potential immigration actions, approve the wellness policy that was warned at the previous meeting. Then we have our board compliance review for policy governance for the 3s and the 4s policies, approve our minutes from our January 13th meeting, committee reports, any other business. Any modifications, changes, adjustments to the agenda? I'm not seeing any. Pat, if you would take us through a roll call, that would be great.
Okay. Tara Arneson.
Present.
Kevin Campbell.
Present.
Heather Chadwick.
Present.
Allison Conant.
She's traveling. That's right. I thought she said she wasn't going to be here.
That's correct.
Gail Conley.
Present.
Stephen Diglio.
He's present.
Tom Firstel.
Traveling.
Meaning traveling to the meeting or traveling away?
He's away.
Not going to be here
Okay.
tonight.
Thank you. Edie Granning.
I am here.
James Granzo.
Here.
Susan Lillick.
Present.
Sandra Limoges.
Here.
Ethan Maurer.
Here.
Stuart Morigeau.
Don't sit still.
Katie Nelson.
Here.
Lisa Pollock.
Here.
Student Rep Sabby O'Malley.
Here.
Eli Wilmette.
Here.
Okay, thanks so much.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have community comments as the next item on the agenda. We ask that community members state their name and the place of residence, the topic of their comment. They will have no more than 5 minutes per person, and the board will not take action on any items raised. Dialogue exchanges will be for clarification, but we will make sure that either the superintendent or I get back to anybody with comments. Does anybody have community comments?
My name is Paris Toniati. I reside right here in Huntington. I actually have 2 boys that go to Brewster Pierce and one that is a senior up at high school. My thing is to have a couple of questions and then just have kind of open dialogue, probably at a future either meeting or situation, whatever it may be. I know I saw on the agenda tonight the bringing up the board about the immigration policy, and I had great discussion last week with John. He answered virtually all of my questions and made me feel very secure as a parent with how things would be handled. The couple of questions I have, because I know everything changes so quickly right now and we're all kind of in a limbo state, is start off with my personal experience. I was a student at MMU when 9/11 happened. And from the perspective of not only myself, but hearing my mom, who was also an educator at the time, she was at Winooski, and how the districts handled things differently. I remember at MMU, the school went into lockdown, but then all the TVs came on and we were all exposed to seeing what was going on. And that was, at least for us here, was very traumatizing. We were told that we were not allowed to contact our parents to reach out. Our parents didn't know about it until we got home and they were dealing with all of these frazzled kids. And that was very traumatic for us. And I know we're in a day and age where we take mental health very seriously and we want to do what's best for kids. I know, again, speaking with John, that he answered things beautifully, and that was wonderful for me. The concern that I have, both as a parent, but also a parent with children with special needs, is I haven't heard much in the way of, will parents be notified if somebody shows up at the front door, such as an ICE agent or DHS, or even the police that are working with these two agencies? As a parent, I don't want to know when my kids are coming home from school. At least two of my children, a change in routine will trigger a whole mess of things, as well as, I feel like alerting the parents, whether it be a quick mass email that's previously set up, or I know we have the automated system, like when we have snow days or delayed days or early pickup for whatever reason, or even the text messaging system, to alert us immediately when the school is in a situation like that. Because I feel, both coming from the child of an educator and having teachers throughout my family, and my mom was also a special educator, the teachers, I feel, and the staff need to be able to focus on the students. They shouldn't have to worry about what's outside. And we have such a great community: Jericho, Underhill, Bolton, Richmond, Huntington, Underhill. The parents would definitely rally together that if we got that, there are a bunch of us that could be down here to be an extra support, so the teachers don't have to focus on what's on the outside. As well as, I know if something like that happens, I would like the option to be able to pick up my student to avoid whatever may come down the pipeline. Because I know, as it was shared with me, unless it is a warrant signed by a judge, we have the safety protocol in place, and that's great. But the kids are still going to see that there still is going to be some disruption. Like I said, I don't want to know about it when my kids come home. I want to know about it immediately. And I know I've spoken to other parents that want to know about it immediately. Whether it is the case that we can come get our kids, or we can create that safety mechanism, calmly, safely. We're just there to be that extra support, the extra backup for our staff, our kids, our teachers, anybody in administration. And also just going forward, I know policies are constantly changing, and we really don't have that mechanism set up.
I hope that, we're at about 5 minutes here. I hope you'll be able to stay for the board discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Other community comments? I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much. Michelle.
Hi.
Pierce.
Michelle Patnode. So I have had the privilege of working at Brewster Pierce for the last 6 months with this super supportive community and incredible teachers and the best students, I must say. We've been focusing a lot on phonemic awareness, so those really early literacy skills, even down into our preschool level. We have been also integrating more literacy into our science and social studies, and have some continued focus on our outdoor classroom. Our 3rd and 4th graders went out sledding and playing tug of war to reinforce their force in motion unit. It was super fun to be outside, enjoy our, the wonderful community force we have, but also integrate, fun and learning in. Questions?
Questions on anything about the school? Not just on anything that you read in the principal report. Any questions at all? No questions? Yeah,
I want to thank you for such a thorough report. That's why I don't have questions. I really appreciated it. I really appreciated the topics that you addressed. Thank you. So, everyone should read it out there. Just because there aren't questions doesn't mean that we aren't interested. That's really why I think on my part.
Yep. Other questions or comments? So the board will be ratifying the principal job at our next board meeting.
Yes.
So there wasn't time to put it on with the warning. So we're excited that you wanted to stay here. We're excited with the community support. And so thank you for all of the work that you've been doing since you've been here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be able to continue the work here. It's a great little place, very special.
Thank you.
Yeah, for somebody who started in August, far exceeded a lot of expectations. You've done a very good job, Michelle. And it's honestly a pleasure to work with you. You're all in, and that shows.
I'll just say I appreciate whoever's idea it was to not have you host the board meetings. I think it was originally scheduled for like the first or second.
That was your idea. Good idea.
Somebody was, I don't think it was mine.
Yeah, it was your idea. It was. It was a good one.
I appreciate your idea. Not making it happen 4 weeks in.
4 weeks in.
To the job.
I actually have one question. If nobody else online has a question.
Sure.
It piqued my interest in the report, and then you answered that when we were doing the tour, but it's about the centers.
Yeah.
Just maybe if you could share a little bit more about how that's working for your third and fourth graders.
So our third and fourth graders are a really big group, and they had a lot of needs. So the idea that they came up with were these centers. So all of the specialists kind of push into these centers. So they have a rotation. So if they have like OT services or SLP services, they go during this time. So it's not like taking out of their other education, like their core classes, their tier 1 instruction, but it also makes it so everyone is moving. So those kiddos who might have those extra services aren't, they're not standing out because everyone is moving and gaining some independence in their schedule. So they have like a little printout and it tells them every day they have a different schedule. So they go to writing, they might have a small group with a teacher or a peer educator, or our VSBA runs some groups, some social emotional groups. Our guidance counselor is running groups, the same thing, some social emotional groups. So it's worked really nicely for that really large group of kids to get exactly what they need.
Yeah, and it's setting them up for success at the middle
In
school.
middle school, right. Yeah.
Cool.
You said BCBA.
Our board certified behavior analyst.
Yep.
More letters. Something like that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Something
Thank you.
like that.
Behavior.
Yes.
Yep,
Behavior
board certified
specialist.
behavior analysis.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much. You are welcome to stay. You are welcome to head out. You do not have to stay for the rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great night.
Michelle.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yes, thank you for coming. It was nice meeting everyone.
So we have discussed board resolution regarding potential immigration actions. And I just want John we haven't talked about this. I apologize, John, put you on the spot here.
Sure, no.
I want you to
Happens
talk
all the
about,
time.
I know it does. I'm so sorry. Talk about what systems we have in place now, what is going on, and what the current, I guess, legal issues might be.
Okay, so I shared this with all our administrators last week, and I also I shared it with staff, just outlining how immigration status influences a free public education, and it's not supposed to. So in 1982, there was a law that a Supreme Court decision was made saying that you can't limit or influence somebody's free public education based on immigration status. And part of that is you can't share information. Further, we don't collect that information. We don't know people's students or really even parents' immigration status, so we couldn't share that information anyway. So that's the first part. The second part is that we don't allow law enforcement or any outside agency to just show up and interview students or tour the school and ask questions, whether it's immigration status or are you on IEP or a 504. We don't allow that. That does not happen. The answer is no when somebody asks to do that. So there's a lot of legal parameters that influence anybody coming into the school and taking a student based on their immigration status. So there's legal parameters around those. I did let people know too that policies don't supersede state and federal law. So if you do have a law enforcement agent, local, state, or federal, who shows up with a warrant signed by a judge, that they can access the premises. They have, and that's every school, in the state and in the country. One of the pieces that I put in there is that I want to be called if that happens, so that I can, I want to be able to, with our legal counsel, verify that this is a legal warrant before we do anything. We'd also contact the parent or caregiver immediately to let them know what's going on. And we would inform if something like that happened. I think that's something that is very necessary. If we did have ICE or state or local police come to our schools, we'd want to let the whole school community know. A Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust, which is where we get our insurance. They also do a lot of HR and personnel support for school districts across Vermont. They're coming up with a set of guidelines that they really are going to be asking all schools in the next couple of days to follow. But in the interim, we thought it was important. I thought it was important to get procedures out so that it could put people at ease, and they could understand that law enforcement, federal, state, local, can't just show up and say, hey, I want to interview Johnny Alberghini about his immigration status. We would say no. The last piece I would highlight is policies are good and they're important, but they don't supersede state or federal law. So you can have something in a policy that you might want, but if it violates the law, then it doesn't, you can't do it. So there are some pretty, I would say, solid, strong legal parameters around what people can do at this time. We want to be following what's going on and making sure we're adjusting, based on the reality and what's happening, around us.
John?
Yes.
If somebody were to show up to our school with you're trying to get on the line. Just lean back.
No, that's fine.
But if somebody were to show up, even with a warrant with a name on it, can we just say we can't confirm or deny that student's enrolled here? Like under FERPA, could we just say we don't even have to acknowledge that somebody is a student with us?
I don't believe so. If it is a real warrant, based on the community. I did talk to our legal counsel last week, and that he helped me prepare the procedures to make sure things are right. But he was pretty clear that if you have a legal warrant, we'd want to verify it.
Right.
Then you really can't say no. You will get arrested.
Okay.
Obstruction of justice or whatever they're obstructing, whatever they're doing.
That is the term that the lawyer used, obstruction of justice. That you don't want to ask employees to do that.
Right.
But what we do want to do is make sure it is a real, valid warrant. And it's reasonable to say, hey, we need to verify this. And my experience has been that law enforcement are good with that.
Does the 45, do you get 45 days though to comply with it? Because I know with post-secondary level, even with a warrant or subpoena, I have 45 days to provide.
I think it needs to be, my understanding is it's stipulated on the warrant
Okay.
what your timing is. There are times when it's immediate, and there's times when you have a period. But I would want to be there and contacted and communicating with our attorney, who's assured me that they would, have somebody available to help us. And I do think that what we really want to try to do, in my, not just my opinion, but I think our regional superintendents, is to be really doing something similar, because otherwise it can create a lot of problems. So we want to try to have something that's very unified across our region. And that's why the Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust, they're going to work on some guidelines everybody can use.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Katie.
So, thanks for pulling this all together, John. I think that it's going to be really helpful for our communities and questions that they have about. My question is, how are we supporting that front line? So everybody that actually answers the buzzer, and what are their rights? Like, the questions they ask when I buzz in are, like, how can I help you? Who are you here to see? Do they have permission to ask for a warrant? They don't have to let someone in without that. Can that be the first line of defense?
That is the first line.
Just clarifying that for our community.
Yep, that's the first line of the defense, and that's really why we got something out early, because the admin assistants, and to everybody, because I might be helping out with the door.
Right.
Which literally I've done. I like it. And just, I think what it did do too is just 99% of the time, it's somebody that's supposed to be there.
Sure.
But I think this just has created a more awareness, more intentionality. It has created that. So people know if somebody shows up that they don't know, they're saying, well, what's your business here? What do you need?
And to further clarify that, and this becomes muddy for me too, because I think going back to our community comment, don't want to expose our students to unnecessary stresses. But there are times where people there's a whole line of kids coming in the front door. And I imagine if there's a police officer there, that it's not going to be something that is suspicious, for anybody to also let them in instead of having to buzz. It's just the truth of how it happens sometimes at our schools. So that's just one little loophole of maybe just reminding ourselves of how access is acquired.
Yep. So we're having a pre-K to 12. This is like, coincidental to it is, but we have an admin meeting this week. And, these are all things that we're going to really make sure that we understand. And the other part of it is that we have a really great relationship with the Vermont State Police and our local law enforcement people. So our liaison comes sometimes to our building, and, that's okay. We just need to know why they're there, and what their business is. So I think it is a good time for us to just make sure that everybody is aware, and that we know who's in the building and why they're there. All our all our buildings are locked, and we have gotten a lot better, over the years about making sure every door is working correctly and locked. I'm not trying to get people or I gotcha, but I often will go around and just do some spot checks on buildings to see if I can get in doors, and I can't. And if I can, I'm immediately connecting with the principal. But people have done a really good job over the last few years of just making sure just locking the doors makes a big difference. Making sure windows are locked, that people can get in. Those kinds of things are, they call it hardening the building. It really, it's one of the best things that we can do. But it is a good reminder that, we got to make sure everybody knows what's going on.
So are you putting together something to send out to the community outlining all this?
My plan was to do it in the February district happenings. The attorney that we work with also consults with the Vermont School Board's Insurance Trust, and I want to get the real stuff. And then he said it would come in the next few days and put that in district happenings, and also, see a little bit what's going on, in our own state and in our own area. But I plan on sharing it with the community.
Because I feel like just knowing, like parents knowing what the plan is and what's going on, they put a lot more people at ease.
Definitely. Yeah. Maybe I'll do it sooner. I hate to. What I try not to do is inundate people, because then they don't look at it. Mm-hmm. And so when I send something out, it's usually pretty important. And so it's not just superfluous sort of info for no reason. But I do plan on communicating that. I'd like the real info so that I'm giving, something that we're going to do for a long period of time.
Yeah.
But I would reassure the people here, here virtually, that we've taken steps to make sure that our students are safe. And I agree with the community comment. If we did have some sort of ICE or law enforcement that are, in the building for that reason, we would need to communicate that to families. That would be important.
Have there been any incidents across the county that you're aware of that have an impact on schools so far?
I have not.
I also haven't heard of any in Texas from school friends that work in districts.
Did you?
Yeah, are there any situations where, whether they're law enforcement or DCF, where a warrant is not needed to gain access to or inquire about individual students?
Inquire, yes, if it's around safety, they can inquire. But we would need parental, permission. DCF is a little bit different in that they have some rights that ICE doesn't. If they think that a student is in danger, then sometimes they will come to school and interview the child. But they have their identification. They tell us why they're there. And they do have some different rights when it comes to child protection.
Do we know of is family services like a potential cross-contamination with law enforcement or ICE? Is that? I
have not heard that.
It's a state agency, not a federal agency. That shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, and we would have, it's pretty rare, just to just because I want to put people at ease too. It's very rare for DCF to come to schools, very, very. They would much prefer to do something outside of school. But if the kid was, in a very dangerous situation, then they would talk to their supervisor and they would, make a decision on, is school the best place to do that for the safety of the student. But I only remember 2 times in 17 years.
That's good.
I'm seeing a community hand up in the room and online. We don't normally take community comments during board discussion. So I'm gonna let the board do their thing, and then I can check in with the board if you want to hear community comments at this point or what we want to do. But I just want to make that very clear that normally it's a meeting of the board that we invite the community to listen in on, and we have a time for community members to share information with us. So let's, Steve, go to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on Ethan's question. it's called exigent circumstances, where it's like an emergency situation where law enforcement can enter a building without a warrant. Exigent, I don't know, I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but there is sometimes. But it's basically an emergency situation.
Yeah, if a student was gonna die, you thought they were gonna get killed.
Exigent.
Board, this is an opportunity, like, do we want to talk about this further? Do we want to take some community comments here? Looking for.
Can I ask a
Yes.
continuation? So one of the pieces in our last meeting was this idea, and there have been people reaching out to have a board policy or a school policy.
A resolution, not a policy, a
Resolution, right? We're not tonight drafting any kind of resolution, I would assume, or is there a draft that others have put forth? I mean, like, I know Winooski, the superintendent there, talked a little bit about their placeness. Are there, aside from waiting from the insurance and the lawyer, like, is that the direction that we want to head right now? Is wait?
We can have volunteers from the board, not we, but we can, very clear on that, can draft a resolution. If we feel that would be beneficial to the district, to the students, to the staff, it is a separate thing. We would want to make sure that it's in harmony with all of the rest of it, right? But that's absolutely something that we can do if that's the will of the board.
So I guess,
Yes, Heather.
my question would be, what use is a resolution if there's law that stands so there's law that says we can't enter without a warrant, and if we communicate what we're doing to the community and everything, so what use would a resolution be? Because it wouldn't be able to stand up against anything.
It's a statement of value.
So it's more almost like a
Position statement, yeah. There are some models out there for what it's worth.
Yeah. I'm going to go to someone who hasn't spoken yet, and then I'm going to come back to you. So okay. Kevin.
Look at that. Haven't spoken yet. That's a record
It's amazing
for me.
that you're
33 minutes into the meeting and all I said was present.
Me too.
No, you spoke just a few minutes.
32 minutes.
I still have the floor. So I'll just, I think for me, we don't do resolutions very often. And I think that's like a good thing. When the board comes out with a resolution, it typically means something because we're pretty conservative on them. I think the resolutions we've had in the past have caused the board to take some kind of action or, kind of shift the district in some direction. And at this point in time, I feel like we're good. Like we have a plan. There seems to be like there's nothing that we need to do differently. So at least I would feel we hold off on doing a resolution, and unless we feel like there's a need for it to cause some kind of action. Otherwise, I feel like it may just drum up something that maybe just doesn't need to be drummed up because we're all on the same page. So.
I did hear a comment from another superintendent who heard that sometimes these can bring more attention to the schools and potentially some of the students. So that's just, that's some feedback that I got that I did wasn't obvious to me. But then when the person explained it, I was like, oh yeah, that it might be some unwanted attention.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about. That's better worded. Thanks, John. Yep.
Dale.
You said you thought there were two citizens here that would like to make comment now, even though they were out of the sequence, but I think if they're still here. and they have a brief comment that would be helpful to us to hear them.
Thank you. Is the rest of the board in agreement? Looking for nods, I'm looking for. Okay, Vicki, you've been very patiently waiting. If you could follow the community comment guidelines that I gave earlier and state your name and your town in 5 minutes and all of that. That would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the question. I understand it's not the usual procedure. It's Vicki Congdon. I live in Bolton. And my question was about a scenario where the child goes into school and the parents are actually the ones that ICE is there for. What would happen in that scenario? What rights do the parents have? What responsibility does the school have, if any? And do we need any kind of policy or procedure to ensure that that child is, has some place to go at the end of the day, or is at least supported if their parents are legally apprehended?
So this has actually happened, not ICE coming to get a student, but we have had parents that have been incarcerated and we support them. And typically the process would be connecting with the Department of Children and Families and trying to get some interim support. So this has happened, and that's the way that we have dealt with it. But we would definitely make sure that the student had a safe place to go in the event that their parents were, arrested by ICE. Or detained. But it has happened. And I did talk a little bit about this with our attorney too, because I said, what would we? He said you do the same thing that you've done in the past, which is connect with state agencies and lean into those to make sure that the student had a safe place to go. And we certainly would make any accommodation we need to make sure that happens.
Did you have?
Yep, Eris Bonietti again, live in Huntington. The only two things that I thought might be good for the board and, general administration to kind of have in mind would be, one, I know a lot of the schools have the sign-in checklist on the lock side of doors. And I know most of the schools have like the double set of doors. Maybe moving that, so that has to be signed beforehand. So that way you have the appropriate names, if they have badge numbers, or what have you. So that information, they don't have to enter the building before they get that, because that, that's kind of one thing right now. I know at least here and up at the high school, you have to go through the locked doors before.
Yeah, we have intercoms, I think, and
Right.
that's that. I don't know that we'd ever want to have a list of students signing in or out on the outside of the building.
Yeah, it was more about like, I know we've got the parents and things like that. And then the only other thing that maybe to have in the back of the head is, I know where we're located, at least here in Huntington, I know it's different because of where you have to travel mileage wise, but Huntington is within the 100 miles of the border. And the 100-mile rule, I think what I looked it up was 65. There is a federal law that is in place that school buses fall under public transportation, and they are allowed to stop and get on school buses without a warrant because of how the borders, anything that borders, whether it be the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific, Southern, or Northern. And I have done quite a bit of research into that, just knowing that we're that close to Canada. Normally it's never an issue, but that raises some concerns. Just in general, maybe to have that info in the back of your head and to ask the people that know more about it. How does that happen? Because obviously we have lots of kids that meet up in one designated spot to all catch the same bus because of the road, or them just being dropped off at the school. ICE doesn't necessarily have to enter the building or have a warrant if the kids are getting off a public bus from a public school district in the parking lot.
It's like you have more digging.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to ask about the school bus. I'm not aware of the 100-mile rule, but if, I guess, a federal law enforcement agent, I guess, could, detain a student, but they would still need a warrant. It's not legal for them to do that.
It would just be to have the back
Yeah.
of your head.
I would hope, I know hope is not a plan, but at least the federal law enforcement and state law enforcement, local law enforcement that I know, they try to follow the rules, and they wouldn't be able to show up and take a student into custody without a warrant. I'll have to check into the school bus because I'm not familiar with that. To me, that's an extension of the public school system, so they'd need a warrant, but I'll check that out. And hi, Vicky. Vicky was on the Bolton School Board. And she's tell Gina I said hello.
I will. Yes, my daughter was at Smiley when Mr. A was principal. So John and I go way back. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking my question. I appreciate it.
Can I just follow up on what we said from Vicky and just the idea, right? So it's one thing for a federal law enforcement person to enter the building. Our school grounds, like I'm just thinking about this, extrapolating this idea of someone waiting for a parent to show up, and then detaining that parent on school grounds.
I don't know, I guess they, I don't know. I don't know if they could. I would assume they probably could, because they could, what's the difference between that and,
Speeding through the parking lot.
yeah, or, I'm using Camel's Hump and Richmond School Street, a little ways up there, detaining somebody or taking them into custody. So I'm not sure that, unfortunately, and there's not a lot the school could do about that. But we definitely could, students. They need it when you're on school property.
Yeah.
You have to have a warrant signed by a judge that has some certain stipulations in it. I do know that.
So like in this community, the backyard play area would be school grounds, but the town forest would.
That's correct.
Probably. Yeah.
All things we never thought we needed to be experts.
Right, exactly.
All right, I have only heard the sentiment that folks are not interested in having a resolution. Am I clear on that, or am I misunderstanding the will of the board?
I think what John's going to come up with, the attorney, is our best bet. Yeah.
I just want to say, having brought this up, that I totally agree with that. And I think it was a real desire to have all this clarified and have this conversation from different viewpoints to better understand where we might have weaknesses in our plan. I think this is all much more strong than, a wishful statement of protection. I think our community deserves to know how we would protect our students, and we needed to know that so we could communicate it. So I feel totally comfortable with moving forward with what the current plan would be.
I actually feel like it's better than a resolution.
Totally.
So I appreciate that the board was willing to deep dive into this and to get this information.
Thanks for making some time for it.
It's what we do. Are we ready to move on? Yes. Yes. Okay. Our next agenda item is to approve the revised wellness policy. So to start this, can I get a motion to approve the wellness policy? Thank you, Katie, and a second. Thank you, Heather. Discussion on the wellness policy. Any discussion?
We took the feedback. All the links are live. And made sure that there was no websites you had to pay for. Again, Katie was on the committee. This is probably a year's worth of work, and I would hope the board would want to pass it. It was a very representative group: parents, staff, board members, administration, school nurses.
And it's a policy that's required.
It's a
by the
required
state.
policy, and it has to be revised at some point. Would you agree?
Yes.
And is that our person, Jessica?
Oh, Jess is here. She said she would come.
And she's
She's been
early.
super helpful.
We're running early. So Steve, I see you have a question, and Jess, we just started the discussion on the wellness policy, so you have good timing. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, my only concern really, I mean, I tried to go through all these links. There's a lot to it. This is a very encompassing thing. It ties a lot together, and I do appreciate the efforts. But that section I that talks about, so it's under other school-based activities to promote school wellness, number I. And it kind of goes through, we shall use a weight-inclusive lens to evaluate our curriculum and culture. We recognize that healthy bodies come in all sizes and weight is not a reliable indicator of health and wellness. And then it kind of goes on. I don't know if I agree that it's one of many indicators, but that terminology and kind of asserting an opinion as a fact, and there's quite a bit of medical debate about, weight and there's a lot of research that says, if you have too much weight and you have diabetes and all these other things, like essentially obesity is a very big indicator of health problems. And I worry language like that could kind of create a false sense of security and not necessarily promote people to maybe make the life changes they need to make to actually get healthy. And I don't know if it's our board's policy or we should be like stating we recognize, like there's a couple spots like that where we're kind of stating an opinion that the whole district has, even though they may not have it.
So, Steve, can I just refocus this on a student wellness policy? So we're not looking at the general population, we're looking at the students in our district, and we're looking at the data around weight being an issue that causes more often than not female self-harm, and looking at it through that perspective, because that's the focus of the policy.
And I'm okay with not going with I'm against the stigma of weight, but and I am worried about students, and sometimes lifestyle changes need to happen to actually get healthy. And this may provide kind of a false sense of security or some empathy, some apathy, where people are scared to say something that needs to be said potentially. And some of this is just doctors need to be involved and us not be involved. But, weight can be argued as a pretty reliable indicator of health in certain situations.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if John wants to answer. I know that Jess wants to answer. I just think that your focus is not on student wellness. It's a general population wellness. And I think that the data that support this policy is very clear and very fact-based. So,
but it is about, I am worried about student health wellness, and I don't know if we're giving them always good advice. Again, I'm fine with us being very clear that we don't want to stigmatize weight.
Great.
But saying that it's not a reliable indicator of health and wellness, obesity, there's lots of data out there that says, you get to a certain point and a certain amount of obesity, it is a reliable indicator that you're going to have you're going to have a significant increase in poor health outcomes, especially if it goes unchecked for a long period of time.
I saw Heather and then Gabrielle.
I highly doubt anyone's going to read this policy and think they don't want to get in shape. I think it's more just that we need to really focus on our young women and how they can reflect on themselves as healthy no matter what size they are. They're not going to read this and be like, I guess I can get that now. But young students, sorry. But I think that, in all respect, Steve, I think you're kind of missing the point. I think this is just an overall, like Edie's saying, overall wellness It's not a debate about obesity. It's more a debate about how we can be inclusive and supportive to all our students, no matter what size.
Gabrielle?
I agree with Heather, and as a student, I just want to say that I do like this language just because I feel like when you're coming into a room or whatever, conversations around health and wellness, it can be very isolating for people who might have insecurities around any weight or anything. So I really like that this talks about just body in a way that feels good. And I think that just keeping weight out of it is important to ensure that everyone is able to feel good and confident within school conversations. And I hear what Steve is saying, but I also think if there is unhealthy lifestyle, that is a pediatrician issue, not necessarily a school issue, because like as a school and educators can't really make assumptions about that just based on how someone looks or their weight on the surface.
So actually, the policy as it's written, I just pulled it up, does support what Steve is saying, which is it's not the school's job to make that determination. The school's job to say that we're not making, that's a good.
Well said. I mean, I don't have anything else to add.
Jess, I saw your hand up. If you wanted to weigh in, you're welcome to.
Well, I just have some data
to the board and the.
Yeah, I wasn't going to weigh in because I think that's a decision that you have to make as a board. But I did want to tell you that I have a little bit. I did because I knew it was a concern from last time, and I wanted to make sure I had some data. I did want to say, Stephen, though, that I agree that there is controversy over whether weight is a good indicator or not. But what we do know is that weight is not a behavior. And if we want to impact students into making healthy behaviors, a focus on that is healthier than focusing on what someone's weight is. But I do have, 45% of female high school students at Mount Mansfield are trying to lose weight, even though only 21%, so about 1 in 5, even think that they're overweight. So, but only 1 in 5 kids is saying, I think that I'm anywhere from slightly to very overweight, but almost half of those girls are trying to lose weight. Same with LGBTQ kids, about a third think that they're overweight and about 45% are trying to lose weight. So it is, definitely an issue. And I also have your data from students who in the past 30 days have done something like taking pills, diet pills, powders, or liquids, going without eating for 24 hours or more. And that's 23% of students at Mount Mansfield are doing that. But when you look at certain populations, female students is 36%, LGBTQ kids, it's 40%. And students with IEPs and 504s are also higher, statistically higher than those without. So I do have the slides if you wanted to see them, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of data to go with some of what we're talking about.
What about the male identifying students?
Yeah, but what about the boys?
Yeah, because I don't think this is gender specific.
No, and there does affect boys too. It just doesn't impact, like in terms of there's a statistically significant difference that girls are more likely to be engaging in behaviors around trying to lose weight, and they're more concerned about their body image. It does not mean though that boys are not. 11% of boys are trying to do those same things I've said to try to lose weight, and about 24% of boys in general are trying to lose weight at school. So it's not just girls that it's happening to. It's just it's a significantly higher number.
I just feel better when all of the data is presented. I don't want to single out populations.
Yeah, the whole
because
population.
In my opinion, it kind of frames it as, well, this is really only affecting like this group of people, but as a parent of boys, right, like they're very clearly immersed in this behavior at school, outside of school, in sports. So I want to just make sure we're identifying all of our students.
Yeah, and the data does show everything. So I could share the slides. I'm just not quite sure how to do it. So I was going to try to drop them in.
Maybe we don't do that.
Yeah, you don't need them? Okay.
No. I mean, I think I like the way people said it, which was, this is about behavior. We're not pediatricians. Pediatricians make those decisions. We support students in trying to make healthy choices, and that's what this policy is trying to advocate for. And so, that's the point of it.
Any other discussion on the wellness policy? I'm not seeing any. Does that mean we're ready to vote? Okay, all in favor of adopting the wellness policy? I want to make sure I get the name of it right. The revised wellness policy. Give me a thumb or an eye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. I think that is unanimously approved. John, you're on a lot today.
Yeah.
So we are moving to our next agenda item, which is, you're welcome and thank you for being here, Jess.
Thank you, Jess.
Which is reviewing the board compliance of 3.0 to 3.5 governance management connection and 4.0 to 4.3 governance governance process. And so I hope everyone did the survey. We have the survey results linked to the agenda. Trying to do too many things at the same time. And also we will link to the minutes, the comments that were sent that were in addition to that because they weren't. So I will.
I did not link them to the agenda. I'm trying to be
in a different, yeah.
Yeah, I
But they'll
sent
get
it.
linked to the.
I can send it, but I always want to be careful. There's not some personally identifiable information. Make somebody, when you're doing comments. So I did not put it in the minutes, and that's why. Because I like to be very careful about people's privacy.
Thank you.
But I can put those in the minutes. I can send those to Pat if you want me to. So we talked about this, probably a month and a half ago. Folks remember that? Maybe not. It was a while ago. We did it so that we could give people the time to take the survey. We used a couple of different models over the past few years. This model came from a policy governance consultant that was created by the Carvers. And so it is a survey that is given to policy governance boards, like Mount Mansfield. And so Tom and I took a look at it, and I think we made a few edits to it, because we thought there was some overlap. So we took out one question and made a couple minor edits to make sure there wasn't a bunch of overlap. And they served the results, the summary of the results are attached to the agenda. And it was a range from 1 to 4. We had a pretty good turnout, better than the last survey that we took. I would say that. I think we had
a dozen out of 15. That's pretty good.
That's good. I think the last time we had 8, so we're getting better. So it's a pretty representative sample of the board, and it really is part of policy governance is saying, for me, it's the executive limitations and the ends. Are we meeting some of our goals? Are you staying in the guardrails, John? And this is the board's opportunity to say, how are we doing? Are we following policy governance? Are we following the important tenets of it? We've had a number of board members, and I have 2, and Andrew Jones took the policy governance training. We also had a training earlier this year, and that training is really critical to be able to, effectively evaluate how we're doing. So the survey is a way to say, okay, John, you do these monitoring reports. How are we doing following policy governance?
And I just want to put it out there. We can, as a board, rotate, or as a full board, write a monitoring report for this. That is an option. We have chosen to do this as a survey to get the data, but this is instead of a monitoring report of the policies in the 3s and in the 4s. So the governance overview. This is why we're doing it this way. So that's a modification on policy governance that we have done.
The results were good. I mean, they really were. There were.
Should we go through the questions? Like, should we talk about, I mean, I want to make sure we're using our time well. I also want to make sure we're following policy governance, and I want to understand where policy governance is working well for us and where it's not working well for us. I think those are the things that are going to help us be more effective as a board. Kevin.
Yeah, I think I just want to maybe rephrase what you said earlier from, like, at least my perspective in terms of why we do the survey as opposed to the monitoring report, because we spent a lot of time as a prior board, discussing how much work we should put into monitoring these policies. And what I came out of that was, let's do a quick check with the board, see how we're doing at a high level. If we see areas where we're not doing well, then we would dig into those deeper with a more detailed report and investigation. But if everybody comes back at a high level and says, yeah, I think we're doing okay, then let's not waste our time going into more detail on it.
Can I follow to?
Please, Ethan.
I think that's a really excellent point, Kevin. I think the question would be is, do we have any highs or do we have any lows? And if everything is answered out of 4, then are we really answering truthfully? We're just giving ourselves kudos for saying we're awesome. But then also, like, where are those ones that step out? And I wonder, Edie, in terms of like a monitoring report, does it make sense, and maybe as a rotation, to sort of pick 1 or 2 of those that seem like an outlier? Right? To me, I'm a solid 3 guy. I really think, I live in that almost fully proficient, but not quite. And then using that as a lever to say, okay, here are the avenues, right? I didn't do the policy governance training. That's maybe something like, oh, right, I answered as a 3 here. I need to take that time as a board, like kind of unpacking some specifics and then letting that kind of filter through to individual board members.
We can. I mean, I would just rather just pick a couple of these questions to talk about a little more, and the questions, more of the questions that people were like, I'm not really sure what that means, because I think people answered them based on not really understanding them. And I think some of that is everybody needs to do not maybe everybody, but a lot of board members need to do a little more policy governance training, right? To understand it a little bit. I think we could probably make the questions a little more clear, right? So the very last question, for example, because I'm doing things in order, board members participate regularly in educational activities that will assist them in carrying out their responsibilities as a board member. Some of this, folks didn't know whether they were answering for themselves or for the rest of the board, right? And some folks are like, I really haven't spent any time learning this year. My schedule's been full, my plate's been full, or whatever it is. And so I think that's helpful, right, on both sides. I think, and rather than having 40 questions, we have 20 questions. And we could have had, I participate regularly in trainings, my fellow board members, and break it out into 2 questions. And so that is a way we can do it. It's not going to take that much longer, but it's definitely, perception is important, right? And understanding how we're perceiving each other is also important. Go ahead.
Right, and I guess that's my question, right? Why are these so subjective? Because a lot of them are super confusing. Like, it's a matter of semantics. If we just changed it to, I as a board member participate regularly or in educational activities, I feel more confident answering these kinds of things instead of my perception of what Ethan is doing. Right? I don't think that's fair to Ethan.
Thank you.
And we can, right? We can change 80% of the questions to that, and then
I just didn't know if
figure
it was
out-
like a PG thing, like you
Yeah.
have to ask the questions this way.
Well, some of it is PG in that you behave as a unit.
Yeah.
So you have to understand as a unit, right? And not just the individual. So I think it's both.
Okay.
And I think it's important also, right? You know, for like you did all the PG trainings and went to like a ton of things. It's important for us to understand, but some of us that didn't, I mean, I went to a couple of them, but like, do you feel like you're being supported because other people aren't doing that training as much, right? So I think like both of those pieces are important to
Yeah, and I don't get that out of these questions.
Right. So how do we, because it's
like a totally different way of thinking.
Surveys are hard. I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Is there a way to do this both like as an individual, right? So changing that perspective so that we're doing it individually, but then, and maybe not necessarily maybe it's a board training, or another opportunity for us to calibrate as a board and ask those same questions of all of us together at the same time?
You know, there's another training on our calendar, ED. And I haven't shared this with you, but maybe we could do that as part of the meeting.
Yeah.
You know, with the consultants.
Yeah. So what we decided,
Getting bold.
what we decided after our last training was that we would contract once we hire a new superintendent. Makes me cry every time. That we will work with them and the board together to further our use of policy governance regularly. So at every board meeting, we're going to have some work that we do on policy governance as part of our board meeting. So that is, we have not yet signed any contracts, but that is something that is in the works and that we, yes,
That's great.
can definitely do. So, or will definitely do.
So we were aligned. And I didn't
We are,
even know it.
we are often fully aligned, John.
And that will make a lot of sense, especially with the transition in leadership, right? To be able to revisit. We have a long history of experience with John, and our PG work kind of has dovetailed, I think, with you as a superintendent, right? Like we're working like a brand new,
Yeah.
and there's like some getting to know each other, right? We're
Yeah.
So coming from the guy who's only been here for 9 months.
You know me. I'm going to pull another question that I think caused some confusion. It's individual board members declare conflict of interest immediately that would place them in an actual or perceived conflict of interest. I think this was a confusing question because we haven't had that happen in the last 12 months. And so there hasn't been that kind of a situation that anyone, we don't know because nobody has said that they have a conflict of interest, right? But there's so I think that's one of those that we have to keep asking whether it happens or not, because sometimes the question just reminds us, right, that that's part of our job.
I refrained from being part of the Jericho principal search party because my wife is applying. So,
Yep.
Because I didn't say it, but I did do it.
Yep. So, so we aren't always privy to those kinds of situations as a board, but yes. Yep.
Yep. But you did share that with the administration.
Yes.
I feel like you said that in a meeting. I think
Last
you even
meeting,
said.
Maybe.
I might have. I don't know. But,
I
yeah.
think you even said it because it might be a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Wow, look at us.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
That
We
should have
didn't
been
make
a 4 across the board.
Seriously.
I maintain confidentiality regarding sensitive information discussed at board and committee meetings. So there was confusion here because confidentiality and sensitive information doesn't happen in public board meetings because all of that is public. So it should say discussed at executive session. So we have some cleaning up to do on the language, and hopefully someone can help me before we do it again.
And this is an annual thing?
This is an annual thing.
We don't have to do it again for the DQS?
Correct. This is what we will have for the DQS because we will have done it within the last 12 months. District quality standards.
This needs them? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm affirming that.
Yep.
Good job,
Uh,
everybody.
Gold stars?
I was going to pull one more
Yes.
question, Kevin, before I go to you. Following the board's code of conduct, board members attend board meetings regularly, arrive on time, and stay for the entire meeting. I feel like this is accurate, right? We had 2 3s and 4s on that, and I think people were feeling like sometimes, sometimes we're not all there. Sometimes people come late, but we understand that for the most part, we are here as a full board with a quorum at meetings. We start on time. And so I think that, just to go through some of these that are across the board.
Sorry. I don't know if Kevin has something related to that, but I wanted to come back to that.
Okay, we'll come back to
Thank
that.
you.
Yep, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so just in terms of like our individual interpretation of the questions, I think that we're always, as we get new board members, recycle. I think we're always going to get feedback from ourselves that the questions aren't quite, easy to understand. But our guiding principles here should be that these questions tie back to the detailed policies that are behind them. Like these questions are intended to give us a check on, are we adhering to this policy or not? So maybe we need to refer to the policy that the question is asking about, so that there's that linkage there maybe, because at the end of the day, again, what we're trying to do is just get a quick check on, do we need to drill more into this? Do we have an issue that we're not adhering to the policy? And we're asking everybody to interpret the policy and then give us a 1 through 4. So maybe that's where we're missing. Next time we should just refer to policy on question, just an idea.
Yep. Ethan, do you still remember your?
Oh yeah.
Great.
Totally.
Are you putting your hand back up? Do you have more to say? Okay.
I am someone who takes advantage of the remote opportunities, as I think not all, but some do. And I think that has led to some changes in that sort of engagement. And I think it may be worthwhile having some conversations about what are our protocols when you are remote. I'm very excited. My wife and I have moved out of the basement. We actually have a dedicated office. So now was not coming down the stairs. I gotta quickly turn the camera off and feel really awkward doing that. But that might be another piece, just as we live in this hybrid world, we're not, right? There's no plans necessarily to change that. So I just think that could be
to talk about keeping your camera on as much as absolutely possible when you're remote, so that it feels like we're all part of the same meeting, for example.
maybe.
Okay.
And I would go even with public comment. It's hard to get public comment when someone's not sharing their camera. Now, I understand that not everybody is really in a place where they're going to share their camera or can share their camera or but that kind of conversation to say do we have norms around being hybrid?
I would love a group of 2 or 3 board members who would bring norms to the board on that. I think that would be incredibly helpful. I think that's a great move forward. So I'm just going to let that hang for a little bit and go to the next thing.
Can I just add one little technical piece? And I really
Yes.
appreciate the work that has been done to make the video conferencing really work. And I know we've had some moments where it hasn't been great. There's been echo, and appreciate all of the efforts to make it work as seamlessly as it can. So
Yeah, and to make the folks in Huntington very happy, it seems like it's working really well tonight, and the video quality and the sound quality is really good. Am I still getting that from folks? Yeah, so
It's really good.
I guess we need to meet at Brewster Pierce more often.
That's kind of what I was trying not to say.
Get on the bus.
I'm going to do one last question for folks, because I think this is a question that we can actually get rid of, but I wanted to put it out there. When board members do not have concerns about the reasonableness of the interpretation of a policy or the evidence of compliance, they refrain from taking up board time to ask operational questions about the area being monitored. I'm not sure this fits with the way we do policy governance so much anymore. And I'm just going to do a little history for folks because it's really annoying, but I'm going to tell you why it's here. When we first started doing policy governance, there was a lot of discussion about what a reasonable interpretation was. And we went down that rabbit hole way too much and just really got stuck in what the policy means rather than getting data and information on how the district is doing. And so I think that's why this policy is here. Personally, I don't think this is helpful. I think we can reframe this to talk more. And I think there is another question that talks more about monitoring reports in the way that we use them now. So I know this one got 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And I think the comments were around, I'm not really sure what this means. So input, feedback, am I understanding this properly?
It's a good question to dump, yes.
From someone who was around throughout all of it. Yes. Okay. Anybody else have something from this survey that stood out to them that made them think this is something we need to talk about as a board? Yeah, Sandra.
I guess I just wanted to add to thinking about when we do it again, in a year. I'm thinking about what if, I like what Kevin said, that it's be important to have the policy available. And I also think it'd be helpful to have the opportunity to discuss the policy a bit in case, just to make sure we're all understanding it. And then my thought is, what if we had the anonymous remote clickers so that we're all answering the question at the same time? And we actually see the answers come up as we're doing that. And I'm guessing that the district has that ability to do that because I think it's been used in classrooms in the past. So that's just a thought for going forward.
Like a mentee or something. Yeah, there are.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I think we could talk about the question and the policy and then answer it as a board. It's a time question, right? Like I think having the answers in advance gives us the opportunity to dive in and talk about them more. But I do think that you're right. We do need to look at the policies, and I'm not sure that everybody looked at the policies regularly. Mm-hmm. And so if there's a way that we can do that better, I think that would be a great opportunity for us.
So if I could just add to that, Edie, that, taking the time to do it together and again, answering anonymously is going to give us the opportunity as a board to look at them together. So it'd be great if we did that on our own. And that's another thing that I took from doing the survey and seeing the results is it was an opportunity for me to reflect, especially as a new board member, where do I need to dive in more personally? So I think it's a really valuable experience. And if we can make it even more valuable, I'm in favor of it.
And so before I go, that said, did anybody look at a policy and say, why is this a policy? Are we doing this? Is this something that's beneficial to our board and to our board structure and communication with district leadership and with the community? Because that's what these policies all cover. Again, hanging a big question out there.
And we did revise these, and we spent about a year and a year.
We spent 18 months revising the policies.
It was long.
And
it was long. It was worth it.
During the pandemic.
Yes.
If they're not working.
Not that we wouldn't change them, but I just wanted for some new people give you some context. I mean, we spent 18 months scrubbing these.
Yes. 6 of us became good friends.
And I think there's a lot, from my perspective, I feel like it's a lot of trust, right? That group came together and spent the time. It wasn't like a day went by and it was like, here you go, and sort of lip service given to we revised the policies. Like it was a deep dive. And I think the question that you asked is, how often are we looking at these policies And, you know, I keep forgetting, like, right, you link all of the policies in the agenda, and that's maybe like some of that training. Cause, you know, should we be like, you know, after town meeting day, everyone gets their packet and they're, you know, we're quizzed on our policy governance, our policy knowledge, like, what is 3.4? You know, like, I don't know if that's not necessarily what we're looking for, but I think
No, but
there's.
that's part of the work, to do 20 minutes at every board meeting, talking about different scenarios and understanding how that fits into policy governance. So that's part of the work plan, starting hopefully in April or May. So we started a little bit before.
So carving out time,
at every
we're
board
going to discuss this
meeting.
policy.
Once a month, not every board meeting, one board meeting a month. Katie, you've been waiting so patiently.
Well, Ethan said a lot of what I was going to say, but I also think that I read these policies before I read the report. I didn't read them before I did the survey, but for myself, especially coming from the community engagement committee, I saw the policies in a different light when looking, like thinking of this information. And I think that's the most important part about our policies. I think I skim through them throughout the year for different reports, or I always think those 3s and 4s are always so enlightening about what we're really doing, right? Like, and when I think about community engagement, so much of what those 3s and 4s are about is how are we communicating to the community about the work of the board. And sometimes that's a mystery to us, sometimes it's a mystery to the community, but I do think the familiarity with those policies in the light of some of these questions really clarifies that. And I think it's important, like I think it would be a good thing for community engagement committee to think about making sure, you know, we've talked about this, like the last district happenings of the year, or it's somewhere, you know, really like a board spotlight on our policies is probably one of the most important things of like what we do and how we do that.
And for folks who haven't had the time, our job description is in one of these policies. So I wish I had brought chocolate. I have mints. I can give a mint to the person who knows which one it is.
I have a cough drop. That sounds good.
Should we link the number in addition to just the policy? Like it's just.
You mean like it is on the side of the agenda?
Yeah, like I'm just looking at this list and there's no numbers tied to it.
I think that, didn't we talk about?
I don't know what you're, I don't
On
know
the
what you're
website.
referring to.
Oh, you should like click through it. Yeah. Yep, never mind.
Okay.
It's cumbersome though.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Didn't we talk about at some point creating, instead of just having the policy there, creating a hyperlink so you could click on it to read the policy?
We did at the side of the agenda.
Yeah.
I think we probably talked about it in passing at a board meeting.
So I think that would help a lot, because then it's like right there, so we don't have to search for it.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't, that's a good idea.
It's 4.2, by the way. Nobody, I get the mint.
So link the,
I know, had it been chocolate, I would have had takers, right?
After I read it.
So, no. All right. I think we've exhausted this one. I'm looking for more comments, feedback. I appreciate the engagement and the discussion. I know that when I ask for volunteers, people aren't always excited about that, but this is one of those that had we had a couple of volunteers to kind of work a little bit on this, like Tom was on his own working with John, I think we would have gotten to where we want to go a little earlier. So just putting that out there. Hanging a lot of things today, just out in the ether. So yes, next agenda item. Yes. All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from January 13th, 2025?
So moved.
Thanks, Heather. A second, please.
Second.
Thanks, Tara and Gail. Discussion on the minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Just looking for any abstentions. So, any opposed? Okay. Unanimous approval for all of the people present. Committee reports. HR committee, as you know, we have done the first round interviews for the superintendent search. We have had a community panel interview. We as a board have finalist interviews. We have work to do first, and then we have finalist interviews next week. I think just about everybody has been onto the website to get more detail. If you have questions about that, that tells me that come talk to me, and I will after the meeting, and I'm happy to help you with that. But there's a lot of pre-read to do before the meeting, and there will be more pre-read on Monday. So giving you all a heads up to some of it now, there will be more on Monday. We got an invitation to meetings that start at 5:30 next week, although we had, 5:15, although we had all agreed to 5:30 for Tuesday and Wednesday next week. I know 5:15 creates challenges for me. Is that an issue for everybody, or is 5:15 acceptable starting? So that's
5:30 is better.
5:30 is better. Yeah, 5:30 is better.
I'm probably running late anyway, so don't count on me for the quorum.
Okay, so I will confirm on the 5:30. We have on the 6th, we will be local at in our community, as it will be our deliberation day. So we have interviews on the 4th and the 5th. On the 6th, we will be deliberating. I will let you know where soon. But is a 6 o'clock start acceptable for folks? Because we won't need the full 4 hours. We will need probably 2.5 hours. So 6 o'clock rather than 5:30 on Thursday, the 6th.
And that's all executive session.
We always start an open meeting. We go into executive session. Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah.
6 o'clock. Great.
Okay, so that's HR committee update. Oh, and we're still in negotiations too with our teachers and support staff. And the website will be updated shortly. We had a meeting today with the latest proposals. So, yeah, Steve.
When it comes to the interviews, you want us to be there in person, right? I saw it came with links for virtual, but we're all trying to get in person, correct?
In person is best. If you absolutely can't be in person because you're traveling for work or you had a family trip long planned, then understandable, but yes, in person is best. And we will feed you, and there will be some kind of information coming out about that soon. So if there are food allergies or concerns.
Did you drop the food for the third night?
You got it. I dropped the food for the third night.
Yeah, you got
It's only 2.5 hours. It's not 4 hours.
What if we come to a consensus very quickly, Gail?
Yeah.
Then you're gonna take everybody to Hatchet.
So you're saying if we draw the deliberations out for 4 hours, we'll get food?
Kevin, if you draw the deliberations out for 4 hours, it will be a problem. Okay. I think that's all from the HR committee. Other questions? So I think we're moving along well. I think it's good so far. So really appreciate all of the community's work, the board's work. I think Okay, community engagement committee.
We haven't met.
Okay, nothing new. Okay. Finance and facilities.
We also have not met, yeah.
So our next meeting on
February 10th.
February 10th will be a budget presentation to the community. In addition to, we will have an executive session following that for superintendent evaluation. So come prepared for that one. But the finance and facilities date has changed. So there is Monday the 10th and Thursday the 27th.
27.
Yeah, Thursday the
6 p.m. Mount Mansfield.
Both of those are 6 p.m.
Postcards going out?
6:30.
Postcard should be out right now. I mean, going out like mailing. Yep.
Perfect. So it should be coming out soon. And that's it on the budget. There's nothing new, nothing. Okay. Regional Advisory Board, no new meetings, nothing new. Legislative and VSBA. So for those of you that aren't aware, the administration has given a proposal on the future of public education in Vermont that is broad strokes. It came out last Wednesday. There's a lot of information online in your email. The SBA sent out a
Ton of links.
The SBA sent out a lot of links.
Yeah.
We're waiting for language, language, bill language, and more details. Is there more?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you able to clarify if we're in the Champlain Valley School District or the Winooski Valley School District?
Where's Champlain Valley? Winooski is like Waterbury.
Winooski River.
Yeah, Waterbury. It's in Washington
I
County.
just didn't know.
No, it's a good. I always got confused with that too.
You can sort of see the shape of our district on the edge. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
That's a good question.
There are not a lot of details.
Yeah. Just curious on that.
Very broad strokes.
That I can answer. Some of it's like, no.
I have Heather and then Kevin.
I guess my question's more like, what's the temperature in Montpelier for like what do, because it's like, I imagine there's just a lot from a lot of pushback. Like a lot of people, it's like, I'd imagine there'd be a lot of people that are from all over the state that are kind of like concerned about this.
A lot of people are thrilled about this. They are thrilled to have direction. They are thrilled that the governor and the agency are leading. There are also a large number of people that are concerned about what the details will be, because at this point there are enough areas that don't have detail that could go in many different directions. And so the people who spend a lot of time in the education world and education law and education policy are less excited than the people who spend less time in it. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. I thought it was probably a good conversation starter. When I went through the video and the PowerPoint, they kept referring to the plan. I was thinking that there was a more detailed plan to go along with it, but I think the plan is the PowerPoint slides, right? So it is very broad brush, high level, and maybe that's the right level to get feedback and get the conversation going. So maybe that's why it's only at that level. I found it interesting that in the map, there's actually 7 proposed districts, not 5, right? There's 2 little small ones, Rivendell and Dresden, which are like impossible to move because they cross over with New Hampshire. So they were just kind of like set aside, hoping nobody would notice. So
Well,
one person did.
they're federal districts. They're not state districts. So they are, we can't change it as a state.
Can't change those. And honestly, I don't think anyone knows the answer, but the question I came out of it was, why 5? Like, what's so magic with 5? Like, there was no rationale behind 5 other than it's less than we have now. So that's probably just a number to get the conversation started.
I don't have any information on why 5, and I tend to agree that It is a number. Do you have?
Well, don't quote me, but what I think, because I've heard the answer to that is that each, like our superintendent association is a region, and it isn't just Chittenden County. It's Addison, Franklin, Grand Isle, Chittenden. And that's the way it is. That's the Champlain Valley region, and the Winooski region also aligned. So I think it's regions where there are the superintendent groups. That's
There
what they
you
call
go.
them.
Wi-Fi.
And then, before your tribute.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Well, one of my concerns with the 5-district makeup, and I've heard some rumblings of this sort of like pitting the urban sort of center of Chittenden County versus the rest of the state, and they've made 4 10,000 seat districts, and then the Champlain Valley district is a 34,000 seat district. So there is this rub personally for me that it continues to pit Chittenden County against the rest of the state, and I'm sort of curious along those lines, like as a board, is there value, and I think some of it is from maybe superintendents as well, to put forward the position whether we can't say we like this or we don't like this because we don't actually know what it is. But that sort of very distinct piece, why are you creating one very uneven district? That harsh.
I think that's very valid, and you are not the first person that has said that. So, and that is where the details matter, right? And one of the, another question is, there are public schools in every single district. Do we need choice? Do we need tuitioning? Does this say we're not going to tuition? And feedback has been, well, no, we have to keep that. Do we? So they're so this is where one of these, it's just, there's a lot of unknowns right now. But that is one that, that has been called out, right? Why do you create more disparity, animosity? Yeah.
Can I ask one more piece that's been bugged out? So the underlying piece of this is to reduce costs, right? This is sort of it's all centered around the tax implications that we've seen last year and this year, and then increasing bit. So foundation formula, however you want to slice that, that's not my concern. I see concerns of Montpelier not necessarily making the decisions, but we're requiring a huge increase in staffing capacity. And one of my questions, to general legislators is, how is this plan reducing costs when you have to increase staffing in the agency of education? I don't see how those two things.
So 2 things. One is you took the administration's plan and said it was legislative, and I just want to be really clear.
Yes. Let me clarify that. That would be one of the questions that I hope legislators would ask, is where are the real cost savings? Are you just...
So that is a question, right? Where are the cost savings in this? The Agency of Education right now has 22 vacancies. We need to fill those. We should not be saving money on vacancies. We need to be able to get support for schools and school districts, and filling those 22 vacancies is not, it's in the budget.
It's in the budget.
Right now.
Right.
Already.
But those positions aren't necessarily going to be allocated towards school governance.
I need them. Yes.
Those 22, they exist now in not the model that we have. So
yes.
They're jobs that we need right now today for the schools right now.
Yes.
Not necessarily.
In theory, if there are 5 districts and 1 reporting system, you simplify the job of the agency, right?
Okay.
And so in theory, right? Some of the complexity is gone and the people can actually do better technical support and supporting of districts and right, like all of that is there.
Yeah.
In that, is that cost savings? Is saving 2 jobs at the agency going to save taxpayers money? Unlikely, right? So where is the cost savings in this plan is the question, and that is a detail that is not being fleshed out.
Thank you.
So, Kevin.
Get my time at the end. Yeah, so at least from my perspective, when I listened to it, I actually took more away in the terms of predictability and control as opposed to cost savings. Like the whole foundation model that was put forward allows the state to budget based on a set number as opposed to guessing what the number is and having more transparency in terms of what the cost is. And then the equity piece, which allows that money to be assigned to, I guess, the districts more equitably. I didn't take away any part of it. I might have missed it that said this is going to reduce a lot of spending.
I think that's a fair read. I think that taxpayers are not going to be happy if we don't reduce spending, and I think that's not an issue for this board. I think that's a legislative issue, so I'm going to take that, change those hats. And there was something else. Shoot, I had an answer for something else that you just said. It'll come back to me. Sorry.
Capacity, predictability.
Oh, capacity, predictability. I don't know. It's gone. It's there. These are all discussions that are not going to be solved in the next week. I hope that they're solved in the next 2 months, right? Really.
They have nothing to do with our budget right now.
They have nothing to do with the budget that's being passed going forward.
Right.
It's unlikely that anything could be put in place to greatly change. Oh, I remember what it was. To greatly change the budget next year either, right? Like that's the, there is a way to read that presentation that says that you're going to be given an amount of money and there's no reason for districts to even vote on budgets because the state's giving you money. So, that could be read into this also, which would simplify things for school boards and districts also. Lisa has her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, their plan is for this to start this year. I know there's a lot that has to go through but the idea, would there be a one-time funding to help even out versus last year for this coming year and then beginning to put the regions in place next year? So
yeah, it's a 5-year plan the way it's originally written, assuming that work gets started, at the beginning of the session. We're already a few weeks in. There's no detail yet, right? So there's, 5 years, right, to get this fully in place. And how do you start it in the right order so that you don't cause harm in the process? That's really important.
And she did promise the world plus saving a lot of money. So it wasn't, there was a lot of cost savings within what she promised as well. So it'll be very interesting to see.
Yep. So stay tuned. It's very exciting.
Next week's episode.
Other business. I know Kevin has other business. Do you want me to?
Sorry, wrong button. I know Jeff isn't here, but we had the PowerShell, PowerSchool, wrong system, PowerSchool data breach. And I think the updates from John and Jeff have been helpful, but are there any updates to share on that? I feel like that requires a little bit of attention at the board meeting level.
No, not at this time. I think we're going to get some new information this week. But I don't have anything to verify with you this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Not just this district.
No, national.
No. But I've heard that we're going to get some clarification this week.
Great. Other business. All right, so just to be clear, on the 4th and the 5th, we're going to start at 5:30 in South Burlington. On the 6th, we're going to start at 6 somewhere in our district. More information to come on that. And then on the 10th, regular scheduled board meeting, we're also going to start at 6 with a presentation to the public on the budget.
We don't have a location for the 4th and 5th, right?
We do have a
Oh, we do have a location.
Yes.
I'm good.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second? Thank you, Heather. All in favor, give me a thumb, a wave, a high. Aye. Aye.
Night, everybody.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Drive
you.
safely or.
Yeah, be careful, the deer.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
Darkness.